As a sysadmin, knowing is only part of the job. Sometimes you have to have the right tools. In my career, I've used several tools in my life, and I think it's time for us to kind of go through that list. So here's a top 10 tools that I've used. I want to share it with you. Number 1, VS Code or Visual Studio Code. I live in VS Code practically every day now that I'm more focused on cloud and scripting. But VS Code is so much more than just a scripting tool. It has a marketplace with tons of extensions that I think it truly makes VS Code a powerhouse. It also has a component where you can SSH into a Linux server and modify the files from that remote server directly on VS Code. No file transfers required, no having to upload or download. It has HTML previewing, Markdown previewing, and it also has a lot more for SQL, Python, Perl, Java, and a lot more. It's honestly the scripter's dream. Number 2, Remote Desktop Manager. Now, I've used Remote Desktop Manager for personal and also in my job. Remote Desktop Manager, or RDM for short, has the capability of you having multiple remote sessions in one panel, and you can do password management. You can also get auditing and some additional features if you use the paid version, which is good for some audits. But it allows you to do, like I mentioned, RDP, SSH. It also allows you to do Apple Remote Desktop. It allows you to connect to certain websites directly from one single pane of glass. It also allows you to connect to LastPass, Bitwarden, KeePass, and OnePass that actually amplifies the connectivity for your endpoints, sometimes your servers. It also has connection for iDRAC, ILO, and I believe IMM. Honestly, it's a time saver. It's one central location, and it's amazing. The next one is TreeSize Free. Now, TreeSize Free is great. It has the capability to check an entire folder or a drive for all the files that might be taking up your hard drive. This is very beneficial when you're running servers with multiple users and multiple applications that has log files, and sometimes you can't find it. What TreeSize does is it scans your entire hard drive just like Windows-Stat or SpaceMonger, and it gives you kind of the folder structure of what's being used. And then from there you can go ahead and find out, oh, do I need to delete this? Is this a temp file, a dump file, or whatnot? Very useful for Windows management, especially when you start getting those low disk alerts. Number 4, Docker. Now, you may be saying that Docker isn't a sysadmin tool, but whenever you need a tool, it's often already containerized in Docker. I use Docker here in my house for several applications. I've used Docker at work. I've used Docker for a lot of things. Sometimes when you're just trying to find a tool like Uptime Kuma or Snipe IT, a lot of those components are already containerized. And if you need to just trial something out, you don't have to install a software where it can just write to your registry or start dumping files in places that you don't even know, so you can go ahead and do a proper cleanup. What Docker does is that it basically puts your application in a Tupperware and lets it use the resources inside of your system. And whenever you're done with it, you can just destroy the container and all the files with it are gone. It does have the capability of also keeping the data persistent. If you want to have, let's say, like a database, you can actually have it stored on your hard drive without having to worry about the data being lost when you upgrade the container or you destroy the container. You can make it persistent. It also has several other features like orchestration, Docker Swarm, which allows you to have multiple Docker nodes and spread a workload across multiple servers. Honestly, it's a tool that I think everybody should start learning. It is kind of the base for Kubernetes, but at least for a sysadmin, when you're trying to launch a Linux server or a Linux application, it's the best. Number 5, Ninite. Now, Ninite is one of those tools that is just a great time saver. It's a collection of freeware that you can just select in one website. Once you select the applications, you can actually hit download on Ninite, and what it'll do is it'll download a very small executable that will go ahead and start fetching all the installers from that list that you selected. Now, the biggest benefit that I have seen is it doesn't just install it, If the application is already installed, it will actually update it to the latest available version. Huge, huge benefit whenever you're talking about maintenance and maintaining your applications and making sure that they're up to date. What's even better is that it will also skip all the unnecessary applications. I'm looking at you, McAfee. And it will just go ahead and uncheck them or just ignore the installers for those third-party applications that are not part of the package. Like, let's say you're installing Adobe, it won't ask you to install Google Chrome or install McAfee or install anything like that. It will just go ahead and download it, install it, bypass all the unnecessary junk, and call it a day. Extremely simple and very useful tool whenever you need to deploy a bunch of applications in a very short time. Number 6, HyperV. Now, HyperV is kind of one of those controversial takes. It's very dependent on what you're doing. Now, I use HyperV because obviously I have a Windows computer, but you can use VirtualBox if you have a Mac or Linux, but we're going to be focusing on Windows. HyperV is great because it already comes with Windows, and you actually can turn your desktop into a hypervisor. You can install different operating systems, like different flavors of Linux. You can probably you probably need to test something for an old version of Windows. You can go ahead and launch it on your machine, and it just basically just virtualizes the environment. It's honestly great for troubleshooting, for testing. If you're doing it like a new implementation, you kind of want to try some things, it's great. Number 7, Wireshark. Wireshark has always been dubbed as a hacking tool. While it is true, it also is a very useful tool whenever you're troubleshooting network traffic or when you're trying to troubleshoot an issue within some of your network services. It can sniff all the traffic on a specific network. And let's say that you're looking at a specific network that's just running slow and you're trying to see what's being chatty. A lot of applications tend to be chatty. You can actually run this application and you can start seeing all the devices that are broadcasting information, and you can start finding out what's causing, that sluggish or slowness to your network. It can also help with troubleshooting TCP handshake, the three-way handshake. It also helps with that level of troubleshooting. Very useful when you start getting to one of those very weird and odd issues. Wireshark's your best tool. Number 8, blue screen view. This tool has not only saved my bacon, but it has given me an immense amount of information when I'm troubleshooting a very weird blue screen. Blue screen view basically just grabs the dump file from the blue screen that Windows gives you, the sad face, and it will go ahead and extract all the information. It tells you what drivers were being used, what process was crashing. It will tell you the DLLs, and if it was related to a specific hardware or software bug. It's very useful to find out which driver might be causing a problem within Windows, or if there's a corruption within Windows. It'll tell you like an issue with a specific DLL, like anti-OS kernel, very, very common. But it also tells you the other associated processes that cause that kernel to crash. Time saver, the best, highly recommended. I also recommend checking out the website that Blue Screen View is hosted on, Nersoft. They have a ton of other tools. Great. Number 9, advanced IP scanner. I hate it whenever I'm trying to connect something to my network and it just doesn't show up in my DHCP leases. First thing I do is I usually run advanced IP scanner. It will tell you all the information, all the IP addresses that you have in that subnet. It will tell you also the manufacturer, the MAC address, and if it also has any like web services. Handy whenever you're trying to, troubleshoot a Raspberry Pi or troubleshoot an IoT that has a web server built into it. Also useful whenever you're trying to find that weird device that likes to change its IP addresses very randomly. Or also if you're unplugging and plugging something in, advanced IP scanner will actually cache that information for you and tells you when, hey, this was live before and now it's not. It will tell you that in its historical. Useful, very useful. I use it quite often, a lot more than I would like to admit. Last and not least, this is a tool that I found it and it's been a godsend. It's called Forensic User Profile Wizard, or Transwiz. How many times have you had to install a new computer for a new user and you got to transfer the entire profile? because they have all the customizations or they're just very set in their ways. And you got to transfer all the configs, all the backgrounds, everything. What this tool does is that it will grab the profile from the old computer, transfer it over to the new computer, just like as is. Now, as a caveat, it doesn't transfer the installed programs. It doesn't install any missing applications. You will have to do that on your own. But what it will do is that it will get that user desktop experience, the mouse settings, wallpapers, color schemes that they have, and it will transfer it over. Very, very useful when you're doing a lot of data migrations or computer migrations, and you have that user that's very finicky, very maybe old school, that don't like to readjust all their settings. This is a very useful tool. Honestly, it has saved me a lot of headaches whenever I'm transferring over a lot of data or a lot of configs that are very specific to a user. If you found this video useful, hit the like button, comment down below what next topic would you like me to cover. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't. If you also want to check out my live stream, I stream every Tuesday around 8:30 Eastern time on Twitch and on YouTube. It's very random, very spontaneous. It's very IT based. It's very nerd focused. If you like that stuff, go there. I'll see you there, and I'll see you next time.